In a game called Look Outside, in which your first prompt is to look outside, the first thing I did was, you guessed it, look outside. So begins a strange, visceral and incredibly unusual experience. Trapped in your apartment at the advent of a deadly cosmic phenomenon, you are tasked with holding out over the course of 15 days, or so you're told, in order to outlast whatever it is that's placing you under house arrest. As the days move forward, more of the block opens up to you, each apartment a new and horrifying vignette featuring one of your neighbours irrevocably changed. It's that Stuart Gordon kind of horror, that colour out of space alteration of the flesh, people turned beyond the cusp of humanity into something unrecognisable as living, something dangerously inviting. Until you kill it, that is. Or it kills you. Or, on occasion, a really frightening third thing happens. A peculiar blend of survival horror and role-playing game, the turn-based nature of the combat and the level-up system do little to disarm the tension found throughout. In the similar vein of games like Fear and Hunger, fighting is something you probably want to avoid unless absolutely necessary. Weapons can break, ammo is scarce, enemies often hit hard and fast, and you have limited options to heal. It's not quite as cruel as Fear and Hunger. The systems here are a little more constrained and manageable, but they seldom allay the sense of stress that comes from either having to navigate around these creatures through tight hallways, between holes torn angrily out of the flooring and countless bits of furniture, or face them down, hands shaking, weapons splintered as a last resort. There are other considerations too. Personal hygiene, sanity. Part of your goal in venturing out beyond the safety of your dwelling is just to find stuff to help you pass the time. You can't just sleep the days away. That's the peculiar cusp of Look Outside's principles of design. There's a sort of resigned ambivalence to the nature of what's going on beyond your own needs. It feels like you've joined protagonist Sam in the middle of a particularly nasty depressive spell, even before the cosmic horrors began. Self-care being so informative of your ability to withstand everything else is a micro-narrative in itself, and although the game encourages you to leave the safety of your apartment, there's so much going on within its walls. I can easily see a version of this game that's just about this space alone and would still be as compelling. Perhaps Look Outside's most fascinating piece of design, however, is its save system, which not only creates a bastion of tension within the game's pacing, but also in turn dictates how you engage with its other systems and design. While far from being forced out the front door, you are required to venture outside of your apartment in search of supplies, allies, and answers, facing off against the horrors at your door before returning back to your sanctuary to rest up, resupply, and go again. In order to save your progress, however, you need to make progress. It sounds stupid to say out loud, but in the context of how the game works, there is a distinction there. Canonically, your save point is an unsettling, inquisitive, but ostensibly friendly eye poking out through a hole in the wall. You tell it stories about your ventures, it records them. If you have no stories to tell, what would it be recording? The result of this is that it's not enough to go out, kill a few enemies for XP, grab up some bandages and painkillers or whatever. You need to venture further and further out, putting yourself in increasing danger as you explore the various floors of your building in search of answers. Each day brings a new gauntlet of monstrosities to explore, evade, and, let's be honest, be brutally eviscerated by. The challenges you face are not easy. You will likely die more than a few dozen times in pursuit of your own salvation, if not to one of the myriad resident evils of the block, see what I did there? Then to one of the many other hazards within this place. Have you ever been killed by a telescope? I have. It didn't feel great. While undeniably a visual treat with some great pixel art throughout, the game also channels a literary angle in its approach to some of these nasty experiences. What it shows is grotesque, hard to look at. What it leaves as plain text is arguably far worse. This is a brilliantly written game, one that goes to some extremely compelling places in moments, exploring the extremes of the genre, the stuff too obscene to commit to audiovisual ventures. If there's anything to give me pause to continue playing, it will be this. Some of the descriptions of what can happen to you if you fail to survive will make you wince. But it's also quite a funny game too. There's some silliness to be found within these more awful, stomach-churning moments. Goofy little guys to go along with the, well, not so goofy little guys. Characterful designs coupled with some charming dialogue options mean that some of the horrors you encounter are ones you slowly become enamored with. Look Outside is pitch perfect in its balance of these two aspects, and I think what makes it stand out the most to me is that there is an inherent tension to the inability to distinguish between friend or foe in this new, altered way of life. Because everything is so unnerving looking at first glance, and more importantly all encounters, whether fights to the death or blossoming new friendships, open the same way, the emotional whiplash of discovering which one is which and the shock when the game pulls a fast one on you elevates both of these to a much more impactful level. Look Outside is a brilliantly unusual horror experience, capturing a type of terror that's often quite hard to evoke well. It straddles the line between impressive tension, comic relief, and repetitive frustration with a unique premise, a punishing but fair set of systems, an exploration space that demands your attention, and some incredibly awful looking things hiding in wait for you in the dark. A cosmic event occurs and all of a sudden the sun burns everything. It's too dangerous to leave your home during the day, and at night there are many knocks upon the door, desperate men and women seeking shelter as the world around them crumbles. The thing is, there are also strange creatures out there. Known only as visitors, they emerge from the dirt with the ability to mimic humans a little too well. Who do you let in? How do you determine who's telling the truth? And more importantly, if you found yourself at the barrel end of someone else's toxic paranoia, how would you prove that you, yourself, are human? These are the central dilemmas you face in No, I'm Not a Human, a short, sharp, surprisingly complex and deeply unsettling horror game. Each night, folk come to your door seeking sanctuary. They have their reasons for being unable to hold fast in their own dwellings, growing desperation drawn from a breached sense of safety, unhinged strangers prowling the streets at night, not to mention the state's own increasingly violent solution to the problem. Or maybe they're just lying. Maybe the visitor at your door is not who they say they are. There are ways to tell, or so the news reports would have us believe. Look at the teeth, the eyes, the hands. Telltale signs of this ruse are plenty, but none of which are unique to these subterranean guests in isolation. Look at your own teeth, your eyes, your hands. Does that make you one of them? The problem is, you can only check these things once you've already invited these people in, at which point, should you feel your suspicions well-founded, it is then up to you to deal with the consequences one way or another. No, I'm Not a Human gets a huge amount of value out of these simple mechanics. Each day you have a limited number of actions to use to check your new housemates for signs of subterfuge, although, in a nice touch, simply talking to them is free. Each night you answer the door. Sometimes it's new people looking for help, other times it's creepy dudes espousing quasi-religious prophecies, or FEMA officials asking for residents to collect for testing. Part of the reason simply turning everyone away is not really an option. Should you dare to look out the window, a narrative unfurls to bring context to the words given to you by these haggard strangers, but everything is just so vague and untrustworthy, it's hard to know what the right course of action is. Fear and paranoia go hand in hand with our own ingrained prejudices. The devil works hard with first impressions. Everyone looks a little ropey at the end of the world. That should not be taken to be an intrinsically inhuman trait. Hell, some of my closest friends would not pass the vibe check here. One of the key themes of No, I'm Not a Human is that concepts of good and evil aren't so easily tied to behavioral patterns. The people at your door, they react in a myriad of ways. Some are calm, others panicked, responding to your interrogations with aggression. However, none of this is really any indication of whether they are human or not, and I think that's the point the game is really trying to make. that societal uncertainty breeds a specific kind of rot. We are quick to make assumptions about others based on their standing in the community, their willingness to adhere to the social contract even in times of hardship. I thought I was better than this. This game has shown me that I'm not. In a particularly evil move, it won't even tell you whether you were right about your suspicions should you take the permanent route to sate your own paranoia. You have to take the killing blow or not there and then and live with the ambiguity. You get a couple of chances to back out before your decision is made, but should you wish to change your mind after, you might not have the wherewithal to do the deed in time. Should your temporary amnesty be the bad decision, you will only know something's amiss if you wake up one morning to find a corpse in your house. You really don't want to wait for that to happen, because what if that body belonged to someone you care about? And care you most certainly will. As unsettling as the rogues gallery of cursed expeditioners that find their way to your door are, I saw myself getting attached to many of them, finding solace in their companionship, trying desperately to soothe their woes, mourning their absence when fate inevitably got the better of me. The game knows this will happen, and it uses those attachments against you. The result of all this is an experience that's in equal parts nasty, terrifying, and surprisingly heartbreaking. It's the gnarliest episode of The Twilight Zone brought to life. Stephen King by way of Junji Ito, a peculiar form of social body horror that quickly becomes way more than the sum of its parts. It gets to you. It really crawls under your skin, and the worst part is not the consequences of poor judgment in an impossible situation, but rather what happens when you end up being the demon at your own door. There is something I feel is seldom appreciated about horror as a genre, which is the fact that implication and ideas are almost always more terrifying than anything a creator can tangibly come up with. The monster's reveal at the climax of a story is scary because of the build-up in their absence, not just thanks to the design itself. When it comes to interactive experiences, this mentality is no different. That immersive quality that allows players to drink in the atmosphere of a place, often at their own pace, allows for a greater sense of gravity to the peril that will inevitably come. That peril, however, can take many forms, and in Stories Untold we have a unique set of approaches. 4 tales of terror, 4 distinct tactile puzzle boxes to engage with, a house abandoned but for a computer playing a text-based adventure that seems to be about you, a lab construct, hermetically sealed, testing an unknown entity that's trying to communicate, an Arctic weather station scanning for voices in the void, and, well, to say any more would be to spoil the surprise. What developer no code have done with this anthology of ludonarrative experiences is take a tactile puzzle box approach to design. Each venture offers up a different means of interaction, asking the player to take stock of their own cerebral inventory to make sense of what is expected of them, learning the rules of the game once more each time, treating those conundrums with an almost playful joy despite the atmosphere of terror that envelops them. It's a lot of fun to be scared and still have a job to do. Far from the restrictive confines of traditional survival horror, what they offer here is something a lot more unnerving. A sense of doubt about your own safety beyond the confines of the screen. What you aren't paying attention to when you're so engrossed in the details of these immaculately presented worlds. Inviting ergonomic devices designed to be fiddled around with are matched by atmospheric artistry. Flickering lights and the deafening roar of an unanswered telephone, howling winds and radio static, a seemingly unending buzz of machinery awaiting your input, voices muffled and seemingly drowned by the madness of your own reality, evil little touches made here and there to elevate your rapidly deflating sense of security. On top of this, one must understand that this is, beyond anything else, a puzzle game, an escape room from which there is no escape. Trading on the unknown, Stories Untold keeps the player in a state of high tension, all the while asking them to make sense of increasingly complex problem solving. In The House Abandoned, you have to navigate an old text adventure, intuiting the right combination of verbs and nouns to reach a conclusion you probably don't really want to reach. The lab construct has you experimenting with lasers, high-frequency resonators, and drills, each with their own set of bespoke rules to follow in order to get these experiments done. The station process has you at the helm of a numbers station, deciphering code and navigating an unwieldy and out-of-focus microfiche log in order to correctly code messages to be sent out to any who remain in the Arctic wilderness. All of these instances of interaction end up being far more intuitive than they seem at first glance. There's not much in the way of hand-holding as you get to grips with each story's core idea. No one tells you how to use the language input sequence of the Futuro 128K+2 computer used to navigate The House Abandoned, but you still manage to unlock its dark secrets. All you get during the lab construct is an instruction manual that tells you everything, but in a profoundly unergonomic way. Perhaps the seat of true horror is how much we rely on good documentation practice in the workplace. The station process is perhaps the worst of the three, with multiple input methods, each of which built around an instruction process that is painful to navigate. All the while you endure terrifying radio messages that imply that you may already be too late. In each of these cases, it took very little time to reconcile what was expected of me to move things forward. What's remarkable is that each of these episodes could easily have been branched out into their own substantial puzzle game. The mechanics are solid enough, especially in syncopation with the game's horror leanings, but that is not the experience intended for us. By keeping these things contained to within the length of a TV miniseries, as the game's presentation implies with each episode's opening and closing credits, what you end up with is a condensed and pitch-perfect execution of those initial ideas. I'll admit that I think the experience starts to fall apart a little in that final unmentioned chapter, and for reasons I won't go into here, once formally revealed, the narrative throughline is considerably weaker than the sense of ambiguity that builds up to it. But Stories Untold is a remarkable effort in offering a different approach to the unique challenge of keeping people scared without the immediate threat of a fail state, keeping the player unnerved at the thought of flicking a simple switch, or trying to decipher a code, or catching a glimpse of some foreboding subtext crashing jarringly into your own reality, even if at the time you don't really see it. Saturnalia puts its most interesting foot forward before you've even ventured past the start screen. While setting up for everything that follows, the game tells you that the intended way to play is one in which death has an unusually punishing consequence. Failure to survive the trials and tribulations of Santa Ragione's Sardinian survival horror leads to the town reshuffling, locations changing, streets warping into new maze-like structures. For reasons I will go into in a minute, this terrifies me. Saturnalia is, in its DNA, an adventure game. It's not just about escaping the supernatural menace hunting you, but also fulfilling the reason you came here in the first place. Reconciling with the father of your unborn child, seeking some closure to who your real parents were. There are multiple characters you play as, each with their own investigations to pursue, lock and key puzzles that often force you to reach deep into the darkness, putting your own life on the line in order to get the answers you seek. Fans of Alien Isolation and the output of frictional games will feel right at home here, balancing delicately the two pillars of design, creative conundrums to solve, all the while evading one invincible terror. What's interesting about the way all of this is presented is that the characters you play as are not stupid. So accomplished they are, in fact, that much of the grey matter work required is already done for you. A branching chart of evidence, ideas, and goals gives you almost everything the moment you become aware of it, and with more than one character in tow, there is also the option to have one of them lead the way to whichever destination you seek. It may seem like this draws away some of the tension that Saturnalia needs. It might feel like it makes the game a little too easy, but putting two and two together on your behalf allows it instead instead to focus on what really makes it tick. My experience with a lot of adventure games has been that the puzzles are often the weakest aspect of an otherwise compelling experience, more an engine for allowing players to engage with a particular space. Much of what draws us to these things is the story, the world, the atmosphere, the problem solving simply being a means of allowing a player to connect more immersively with the dilemmas their protagonist may be facing. In Saturnalia's world, finding out what you need isn't really the thing that drives the player. Where you will find that thing, and more importantly how you get there without being nabbed by the things that go bump in the night, that's what really matters. Because this is a town, and because most towns have some form of publicly accessible map, you have an established knowledge of where points of interest generally are. The church, the school, the mines. However, as one might come to understand with any exposure to an old European town or city, these streets are winding and web-like. They have narrow passages and dead ends, and especially when caught in the dead of night, it's remarkably easy to get turned around or even lost entirely. And that's where Saturnalia gets you. Familiarity breathes slowly, with panicked gasps in the dead of night. What might become routine to a person in daylight hours takes on an almost amnesiac quality when engaged through this lens. Add a creeping figment of nightmares to the mix, and you have a brilliantly tense horror experience. Saturnalia is kind, however. It understands that sometimes you get caught short and it might not always feel fair. Should one of your characters get murked, another can follow the blood trail and come to your rescue. Yes, that puts them in harm's way also, but maybe the risk is worth it. Should everyone fall afoul of the town's curse, however, well, it's time to re-roll, baby. A new layout to try to learn, new locations for all those items you worked so hard to find. It begs a question about who the real monster here is. The creature stalking these mist-strewn avenues, or the municipality that birthed it? Saturnalia is a remarkably easy sell. It's Amnesia: The Dark Descent by way of Spelunky, a brilliantly envisioned mechanical construct all brought together by this incredible presentation, a colour palette oozing with atmosphere, and a cultural identity seldom seen in this space. It feels in many ways like a mix of two cult classics, smouldering European detective drama and giallo slasher flick, the two tones going hand in hand incredibly well, both ludically and narratively. And yet, despite its genealogy being a generous pinch of inspiration from many different corners of artistry, I don't think I've played anything quite like this. It's so comprehensive in its identity as a horror game, reconciling compelling character drama with the old town mythology, demonic forces as allegory for an overstretched reach of religious fervour, those existing in sin as the last vestiges of salvation for a world reborn in darkness. It's gorgeous and horrific, melodramatic and gut-wrenching, and above all else, so very unusual.